Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's Nostalgia here, and Visionary Realms just had their latest Pantheon stream a couple of days ago. I'm obviously a little late getting to this, so I apologize to everyone. I honestly wasn't even going to do it. I was going to skip to get to the next bit of news and just kind of round everything up because of how late I am. But for those of you who don't know what it is I do with these videos, I like to break down the stream and just give you the facts, all of the really good bits. And this one was about 3 hours long. So it took me a while to get all of this written down, all of the keynotes that I think you guys need to know. I said keynotes, not keynotes. I know that sounded a lot like keynotes. That was completely coincidental. But nevertheless, it takes some time to compile all of this. So bearing that in mind, if you get to the end of the video and you happen to enjoy it, I ask that you please subscribe and hit that like button. Now, first of all, I have to mention that this game is still in early alpha. Everything that you're seeing is still in development. And for those of you who might be living in a Knoll cave, this is an old school MMORPG, and by that I mean it's going to be somewhere around the neighborhood of the original EverQuest and Vanguard. This is anything but your more modern cookie cutter style MMORPG. This is harkening back to an earlier period when adventure was really something to fear and be excited about at the same time, because if you die, it kind of sucks. There's penalties to it. So you respected the world a little bit more. Companionship was a bigger deal. You had to group with people. But I'm not going to go on and on about all the older mechanics. A lot of you already know this, but for those of you who might be new, that's the kind of game that this is. The first thing that really stood out with this stream is they were showing off other races. They weren't just showing humans this time. They showed off the ogre, they showed off a dwarf, a gnome, and an archai, and they all looked really good. And they also said that this is not going to be the final pass for the character models and the character animations. The animations are placeholder. The stuff is going to be updated and yada, yada, yada. You guys know the drill with early alpha. Things are always going to be progressing until the game comes out. We also got to look at the shaman class. The ogre was a shaman, and it was pretty damn awesome. The spell effects are looking pretty good, and I do think that those are a placeholder as well. I think they're going to be changing those and fine-tuning all of that stuff too. But so far, things are looking really nice. We got a bit of a sneak peek of Wild's End, the halfling starting area, and there was an overworld dungeon there that was really cool. There was like a reptilian humanoid race there. All of the architecture here was really nice, and the lighting is looking really good. I gotta say, the performance and everything from the stream, and I was watching Ko's stream, because the stream that Visionary Realms had going on, it kept dropping, and it doesn't look like they're using the best quality. If you guys see this, Brad and company, you guys got to work on your streaming, man. It doesn't look very good. When I was watching Ko, I was like, oh wow, look at that. It looks so vibrant and bright, and it's running really well. It was in 60 FPS, and it looks good on the highest settings, and with a good stream, it looks phenomenal. But on Visionary Realms side of things, the stream seemed to be around like 720p, 30 FPS. So I think that's something that they might want to work on. Just a little constructive criticism. I'm not trying to be a dick. I want people to see this the best way they possibly can. That's why I'm thankful that Ko was doing this. Hopefully he doesn't mind me using his footage. Hopefully he's cool with that, because it does look fantastic. He had it on the highest settings, 60 FPS, 1080p, and it just looked beautiful. It was running great. It was very vibrant. But, you know, I know Visionary Realms they're focused on building the game. Streaming the game isn't the top priority. I get that. Building something like this from the ground up is an immense amount of work. So getting back on track, Thronefast was another area that they showed, and this is the human starting area. This area very much reminds me of High Pass, or High Keep for you original EQ fans. We called it High Pass and EQOA. It's really nice out there. It has that familiar feeling. It seems like you could just go running down the side of a cliff and find highwaymen somewhere in a cave. It's got that traditional feeling that EQ and EQOA fans are going to vibe with. You're going to be standing there looking around and thinking, holy shit, this is pretty much High Keep or / High Pass 2.0. For me, the most interesting area I think that they showed was Amber Fate, because it's like a huge sprawling dungeon, but there's supposed to be a raid in there somewhere the further you go in, and this is where they showed off the climbing feature. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the draw distance was really impressive. They were looking out on this kind of overlook where they could see the entrance, they could see people coming in, they could see their torch, and they could see a party down below them. And the draw distance was really impressive. They spoke about how important it is for people to look around and see other players engaging enemies in different groups around to make the world feel more lived in. Now, in terms of climbing, this is going to be a skill. It kind of reminds me of Asheron's Call. I believe they had a system like that where you had to actively level up these things. Also reminds me of the Elder Scrolls, where you have certain skills that you could level up just by doing them. But by leveling this up, you're able to climb different faces, different types of structures to get into different areas. They also mentioned that certain classes will be able to aid in climbing. For example, rogues will be able to use ropes to help their teammates get up certain areas, maybe only accessible to rogues. So this is very interesting. They seem to be putting an emphasis on the worth of your character. They're doing the same thing similar with teleportation, and I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. There was a question that somebody had asked in the chat about player behavior and how they're going to handle people who kill, steal, and train and that sort of thing. And it just kind of goes back to that old style community where if you act like a dick, you're probably going to have a hard time finding a group. And this is an excellent opportunity to explain to people who might not know anything about old school MMORPGs. It's not like it is today, where you would queue and get a group and then whatever, you forget about those people literally seconds after you're done running with whatever dungeon you zerg through without talking to anyone. This is very much community driven. You don't want to be a dick. So that's going to kind of police itself. Yeah, you're still going to have griefers and people that love to be infamous. That has certainly been a theme in previous old school MMORPGs. I have met those individuals. They're not very pleasant, but they're out there. They do exist, but they're pretty easy to avoid. And on the subject of bad behavior or not very acceptable behavior, kill stealing will most definitely be a thing. The group who does the most damage is going to take the mob. So it kind of comes back to that old issue of people moving in on your camp and stealing your shit. And that's something that, to me, I've got some bad memories of it. But I think it's kind of a necessary evil if you're going to try to build a world like this. It's just the way it is. The same thing with death penalties. Nobody likes when they die having to deal with that penalty. You might like that penalty being there, but you don't like the penalty itself. You like the reasons for it. You like the fact that it makes the world feel more dangerous and exciting, and you respect it more. It's just more adventurous for you. But you can't have that without a death penalty. And you can't have that without some reason to fear that kind of stuff. So necessary evils, I think, are a part of this game. I can tell you right away, a casual player hears these things and they're going to start running in the opposite direction, but that's a mistake, I assure you. Because these things, while they are frustrating, yes, and I will probably have several moments on stream where I get upset from wiping several times in a group and getting tons of debt or whatever it is they choose to do for the death penalty. By the way, it's not set in stone yet. But I know that it's there for a reason. It has to be there for me to get the experience that I'm getting. Something that should make everyone happy. You're going to be able to check out this game for free. When it does launch, they're going to have some shards put aside for people to log in and get to about level 5 or 10, Brad said. I think this is really smart because I think a lot of people are probably going to hop into this thinking that it's something that it's not and they might not like it. So instead of having buyer's remorse or trying to get a refund, they're letting people check it out. I should also point out that they are targeting a monthly subscription fee of $15. There's also going to be regular expansions that are going to be DLC. I don't think they're planning on having any physical copies of DLC going out. Also worthy of noting, they said they want to launch with a raid-ready zone. This is something that a lot of MMORPGs don't do. People get to endgame and they get bored immediately, and then it's a scramble for the devs to try to put something together for people to do. They don't want to have this kind of a situation. They want to raid right out of the gate, and that is fantastic news. In terms of travel, as a low-level character, you're going to be doing a lot of walking. You're going to be running everywhere. At higher levels, you will get access to a mountain, but druids and wizards get teleportation spells. This is something that EverQuest fans are used to, but something that's unique to this is they're going to have these certain areas where you can attune to, and you can only have so many attunements before you fill up the maximum amount that you can have. So what that means is you're going to have druids that have access to areas that other druids don't have, because you can only have so many of these attuned areas in your kit, and they are independent of the regular spells that everybody's going to have as a druid and wizard. So that means that you're going to have a lot of variety in where certain people can take you, and that means that you're actually going to be able to charge for your services probably a lot better. I think that was the reason why they did that, because back in the day, people used to tip for teleportation, And having all these different areas, it means that not everybody's going to have every place, so it increases the value of someone who can take you there. Very clever design decisions, and I have to say there's a lot of these small mechanics that they're putting into this game, and it's making it feel fresh. I'm going to talk about this towards the end of the video, but there's a lot of these mechanics. I'm going to be going over a lot of them you guys are going to see. They also mentioned that druids are going to be able to manipulate the atmosphere around certain areas. Maybe there'll be a boss that has a frost shield, and a druid can change the environment around that boss to be hot and melt the shield so that maybe you can actually do damage. Maybe the shield would make it so you can't do any damage at all, or maybe it just mitigates damage. So having a druid that can do that, once again, it's pointing to characters that have worth outside of their traditional roles. Now, I'm talking a lot about druids and wizards here, but I'm assuming that all classes are going to have some sort of unique ability that they can do, or some sort of unique outside of combat kind of thing that they could bring to a group situation that's going to make them valuable. There is going to be 9 playable races at launch, 12 classes. Necro and Bard may or may not be part of the original launch or coming soon after launch. Hopefully they're there, because I know that makes or breaks the game for a lot of people. I've seen people say, especially with Bards, they're either there or I'm not getting this game. People are really passionate about Bards and Necros, so hopefully they can get that done before launch or really close after launch. Character customization is going to be standard MMO fare. It's not going to be anything too terribly deep, not like any of the deepest MMOs that we see out there with customization like Black Desert Online, for example, but it's not going to be lacking either. Factions and kill on sight will definitely be in the game. There's also going to be a moral system that goes based on alignment, and that's going to affect the way NPCs interact with you as well. Some races are going to be evil aligned, some are going to be good aligned, and I think that you can even mess around with that by your actions to go even further evil, or maybe you want to go further good. I think that's something that they're planning on putting in the game, and that's going to open up different opportunities for quests. If you're someone who's not very nice, you might not be able to pick up like a goody two-shoes quest, and vice versa. And I have to say that it reminds me a lot of EverQuest Next. That was an idea they wanted to toy around with for the game before, well, they completely scrapped it. They also were messing around with the idea of NPCs that change around player behavior. Like if you wipe out so many in a zone, that might change how many numbers show up, or maybe a different faction will move in. They said they're also going to be messing around with that and experimenting with that to see how they can fit that into the game. An interesting point that Brad had made, he said that if you were to come up to a raid that's designed for about 20 people, with like 100 people, it might affect the way that that NPC reacts. The boss might run for reinforcements and come back and completely change the way that encounter functions, and instead gives you a challenge based on the number of people you have. And it kind of makes me laugh, because I can imagine about 50 or 100 or so people trying to go into a raid that's designed for maybe 20 people, and they think they're going to be slick, and then a bunch of nasty shit comes out alongside the boss, and that would just be a hilarious moment. It takes time to form these raids, by the way, if you're not privy to that information of old school raiding. So spending a couple of hours getting a raid together only to find out, oh shit, he ran away and he pulled his buddies, that would be pretty comical. Not if you were in that situation, but from the outside, that would be damn hilarious. They mentioned the perception system, and this is really interesting because it's going to allow for rich quests and story content inside of the open game world. You're not just going to have hubs that you can run up to, and it streamlines you through theme park style, quest after quest, zone after zone. You're going to come into things that you encounter naturally, where maybe an NPC runs up to you and needs your help. Maybe you'll run into that quest halfway through the quest chain. You don't have to go right to the beginning of it. There might be several stages and you stumble upon like stage B, for example. So it's going to be very dynamic like that. If you're going to want to be doing these things, you're going to have to become what's known as a keeper, and you will gain the ability to have 2 skills, a passive skill, insight, and an active skill called investigate. Insight is how you're going to be able to initiate these quests. It's where people are actually going to come up to you, or you'll spot things in the game world that you can interact with to initiate a quest. This is something that, again, encourages exploration. It's going to get people out there exploring the world. You're not just going to a hub. You want to look around. You want to find NPCs and items of interest so that you can get these quests. They also said that they're going to be having class-specific quests that you can do for, say, like epics and things like that, that aren't going to be related to the perception system. Another thing that I thought was absolutely fantastic is they want to have low-level camps and high-level camps in every zone. They don't just want people going from one zone to the next and abandoning all the other zones and leaving them empty. That's something that really sucks. You see that a lot in many games. So potentially you're looking at a kind of a game where you could go through all of the levels in a single zone. I think that's great. If you really like an area, you should be able to just stay there and level up as much as you want in that area. And another thing that this opens up by having low levels and high levels in the same zone is the low levels could maybe get help from the high levels. They could get buffs. Not only that, when they look at the high levels and the awesome gear that they have, they're going to be inspired to continue based on seeing them because they want that themselves. This is something that certainly has happened with me in EQOA and other MMOs. Voice chat is going to be in the game for groups and guilds. Not really a big deal to me. I'm going to be on Discord. By the way, you're all invited to join me. I'm going to have the link in the description. You can hop into the Discord, join the Nostalgia Nation. We're making a big push when this game comes out. So that's cool that that's there. I think a lot of people, like I said, are on Discord and on Skype, but still it's nice to have that as an option. Group size is still set to be 6 players, but they're not entirely certain on what they're going to be doing with raid sizes just yet. The game is definitely going to be coming to Mac. Consoles is still up in the air. They're undecided if they're going to be doing that, but they said that it is definitely friendly. Unity is definitely something that's friendly to bring over to consoles, so they're not ruling it out. I personally don't think that that's going to happen, but hey, you never know, it might. They are going to have offensive and defensive targeting that's independent from each other, so you can heal someone while also attacking an enemy. In the way of housing, it's not something that's going to be available at launch. They said they don't want to have instanced housing, but they don't want to have suburban sprawl, where you have a ton of houses around and nobody can really put a house down. They're leaning toward the side of guild housing, and they want to make it so that you can kind of pick up and move wherever you want. It's kind of like caravanning your guild from one location to another. Also worthy of mentioning, they are talking about having ships and things like that in the game as well. I haven't personally experienced anything like that in a game. I know there's a lot of them out there, but I'm excited for this. Like I said, I haven't experienced anything like that. So definitely looking forward to that. The earliest alpha testing where people are going to be able to get in and experience this game is going to be in the first or second quarter of 2017. That's the target for now. They said that it could be pushed back. They want to have an entire continent of King's Reach available for people to run around and test in. So it's quite an undertaking. Racial bonuses are going to be in the game. There are going to be trade-offs as well. There'll be certain perks, but also some negative effects associated with having those perks. Certain races, for example, like the dwarves, they might have better frigid resistance. Now, for those of you who remember the previous stream, the previous video that I did, they showed off atmospheres. These are going to be certain areas where if you encounter them, you're going to have negative effects. And if you don't have preparations for that, you're going to endure those effects and they're going to be pretty nasty. Now, one example of this is frigid. You might come into an area that's cold and it can inhibit your ability to attack. Maybe your attack speed is going to get slower. But if you got warmer clothing on or something that can negate that effect, you're going to be all right. But there's going to be different tiers to these atmospheres, like 3, 4, 5 different tiers. I'm not certain how many tiers are going to be, but the severity of the debuffs are going to be more and more apparent. Some areas they might sap your health just by going into them. They might sap your mana, so you're really going to want to try to counter these with spells and different items that you can get in the game. The different types of atmospheres that they have in the game are going to be frigid, scorching, toxic, anaerobic, pressure, and wind shear. Again, this harkens back to the little details, the little things that they're putting in there to add more layers of depth. It really reminds me of Plane of Disease, for those of you who remember that from EverQuest and EQOA. It was an area where you needed a zombie flesh suit. I don't know what you needed for EQ, but EQOA, you needed a zombie's flesh suit to be crafted so that you could go in there. And this is basically just giving people more worth. Like I said, certain characters are going to be able to handle things, and crafters are actually going to matter because they're going to be crafting the things that can prepare you for these really harsh atmospheres. I'm assuming you're also going to be getting gear that drops that helps with atmospheres as well. They said a lot of the crafting stuff, a lot of stuff that you can craft is going to be stuff that also drops. But I'm going to be touching on crafting a little bit later in the video. Guys, sorry this is very long, But there's a lot of information like I showed you with my notes, and this is a 3-hour stream. We got a lot of really good details here. The game is going to have a limited action set of about 10 or so actions that you can perform at a time. There's going to be more abilities and spells that you have. You're not just going to have 10, obviously, but they only want 10 or so on your bar at one time. They don't want you balancing 3 or 4 bars worth of abilities, and that's something that really it irritated me about EverQuest 2. In a lot of games, they have just way too many abilities for you to balance. You're sitting there and you're just babysitting the cooldowns. I don't like that. I like a limited action set myself. They are going to have a moddable UI, so you're going to be able to customize that to your liking. There is going to be a guild outreach program and a mentoring program for people. So if you're looking forward to doing something like that, if you liked being a guide back in the day on EQOA, you can do that again. You can help people out. They're going to have a means for people to look for guilds, and they're going to have preferences where you can put in time zones and things like that so you can find like-minded individuals. Something that's really interesting to me, if you happen to be an altaholic like I am, you like to make alts, they have something called the progeny system where making an alt, if you have a higher level character, you're going to get some bonuses on your alt. At the end of the stream, they were fighting a boss, and he had a collar around his neck, and somebody had mentioned that it might be making him behave in a certain way. So it just shows that there's going to be lore around the bosses and things like that. They're not just going to have bosses there for whatever reason. There's going to be a purpose for them. Now, at this point of the video, I want to start talking about the crafting stuff that they mentioned, and there's a pretty decent amount of details that we got. So first of all, obviously crafting is going to be in this game. They want as many secondary skills as possible, and fishing is going to be a thing. So for those of you who like fishing, there you go. It's going to be in the game. As I mentioned previously, you're going to be able to craft a large amount of items that drop in the game. They said they want to have a big emphasis on adventurers needing crafters and vice versa. Something that's interesting is they said that crafters are going to be able to tailor-make gear for you. So you might get a gear piece that you can trade, because most of the gear in the game is going to be tradable. You're going to be able to trade a lot of this stuff. Obviously, epics and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to trade it. But most of the stuff is tradable. However, if you have it tailor fit to you, you can squeeze a little bit more power out of it. You can get a little bit more stats out of it, but you can no longer trade it. So it's a trade-off. Do you want to be able to trade this item? Do you want to be able to sell it to another player? Or do you want to get the most out of it? Do you want to bring it to a crafter who can tailor fit it for you? I think that's really awesome. And again, it gives people more worth. It's giving crafters more worth. They're not just there to craft gear. They can tailor fit that shit around your class. You're also going to be able to break down gear to get raw materials for crafting. But the most interesting thing about crafting that they spoke about was there was this area in the game where there's this anvil, and there's a dwarf down there. And you have to go down there and start a quest with him and progress the faction with him so that you can use his anvil to make some more powerful items, some of the most powerful items that are going to be available in the game at launch. Getting into this place isn't going to be easy. It's in a dungeon, and not only that, but you need scorch resistance to go down in there because it's very hot. So this is for the people that really want it, and the rewards are going to be worth it. You can really see the player-driven economy that they're trying to go for here, and all the little details that they're putting in. Like I mentioned, all these little things, all these different layers that make an older formula feel fresh again. It's not just EverQuest rehashed. It's EverQuest style gameplay. Yes, that's at the core of it. But there's many different layers that make it a unique experience and that makes it fresh and new and exciting again. So there you have it, guys. We got through a huge list. Congratulations to you. You sat through a mountain of information because this was a huge stream and was by far the best stream that they've done so far. It is just the size and scope of it. You really got to see how this game is shaping up. For the first time, you can truly feel, holy shit, they're doing this. It is falling into place, and you can just imagine the people running around in the groups. The whole time I was watching, I was just imagining all the people that are going to be coming and going through the roads that they were taking and all of the activity that's going to be taking place. Very, very excited. I'm hoping that you guys are excited too, and I'm hoping that if maybe this is the first time you've heard of Pantheon, I've piqued your interest. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to take a moment to leave a like. If you're new here, please subscribe. I will be covering Pantheon for a long, long time. I thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next video.